Hi, girls. Hope everyone's doing well. Welcome to our first session of 2021, as well as the first day of 2021. I hope you all had a great New Year's Eve. So today, for our session, we're going to continue on our JavaScript journey with the next element in HTML that will let us do all sorts of more fun things in JavaScript with it. This element's called a select element. You might be familiar with it if you've ever seen a drop-down menu on a website like this. Looks like that, or looks very similar to that. There's one I have right here. It was actually very convenient to stay in Google Docs mode, so everyone could look at that. So why would we want to choose a select element? We spent all this time working on all these nice text elements, and they were working great. What reason could we possibly have for having to include more things in an element for someone to use? So a select element is at its best when there are way too many options for someone to enter into a text box. So let's go in here. This should look very familiar with the exception of this little thing sticking in here. This is the exact same project that I was working on last time. So let's say we have all these nice things people can enter, but one of the things we did last time was my favorite color is. So you let anyone enter whatever color they wanted, and it worked great. You just took the color down here in the JavaScript that they entered, and you set the background color of the page equal to that color, and everything was fantastic. Totally done, right? Not quite. So let's say that someone's favorite color here was black. You'll notice I have this lovely light blue background that I chose because I think it goes really well with Snoopy, and I'm still a little bit in snow mode. Then I also have this navy blue-ish color that I picked for my welcome paragraph tag and my welcome paragraph text. The problem is if I say black is my very dark favorite color, and then I fill in the rest of this information, ignore this for now, and I say submit, well, it used all the values I picked. It did a great job. But I think you kind of have to be really gifted to read that effectively on that black background, right? That's pretty difficult. You could highlight it with the cursor, but that's not really what we want someone to have to do just to be able to see. So giving someone maybe just a total set of choices, whether it's just even words alone, color words alone, but also all of those color codes, you could never anticipate all of the colors they would choose. That would be just crazy to think. So something like a select element lets us provide the choices for someone, and then once we provide those choices, we know the only things they can pick are from the list of choices we gave them. And that gives us a lot of power in our JavaScript to make things happen accordingly. Another really good example of this is if you were building, let's say, a website that let someone go on and search for all of the dogs and cats and rabbits and ferrets and guinea pigs and hamsters and anything else that were up for adoption in your area. The first question you're probably going to ask someone who's coming to that site to search is, what state do you live in? Well, if you just give them something like this to enter a state, they might enter PA, they might enter Pennsylvania, they might enter Penn, they might enter P with a lowercase a or P with lowercase a and a period. That's 4 different options at least right there for the same state. But how would you possibly be able to know all of the options someone could enter? In addition, they could spell something wrong. If they spelled Pennsylvania wrong, and admittedly, it's a tough word, so I could see that, then they're not going to get any search results back, and they're going to be very confused because I'm pretty sure every state has many dogs and cats and ferrets and guinea pigs available for adoption. So that's a little bit confusing. A select element lets us take that confusion away. So it's really important up top to make sure we know why we would use this and when we would use it, because it is more typing and that does seem a little demoralizing before you start. So now that we understand how it could be useful, let's talk about how we use it. So as usual, we have a step 1 that's putting something in our HTML section of CodePen and a step 2 that's putting something in our JavaScript section. So in this case, you'll actually see over here, I put this inside of my long form that I already was asking questions in because I felt like it went together with that. In that case, this is all I had to add in between my form open and form close. I already had that. If you were putting this into a brand new project just to start working on this, then you have to make sure you have your HTML opening and your body opening and your form opening. Then you could put this in, then your close form, close body, close HTML. But since, expand this so we can see it as it sits in here. Since I already have this stuff and then I have my form opening, then I have all the other things that I needed to ask all of these lovely people visiting, I can just enter it right afterward, right in here. Now the construct, I'm going to do this, the construct in CodePen because this is where their syntax highlighting is incredibly helpful. So just like with our form elements for text, it's going to be a type of element. In this case, it's not actually called an input element. It's called a select element. So we open that up and then we need to give it an ID, just like everything else. Always give it that because that's how we're going to access it down here. Very important. So we open that up with the ID and then we close it at the bottom. And everything in between, think of this again like you're doing with a list or something like that. You have your start, you have your end, then you have some stuff shoved in the middle that belongs to that. These are the grown-ups and these are a bunch of kids in the middle that you're trying to keep together. So we have one line for every choice we want to have in here. So I have 4 choices and a starting one in here, which means I have 5 lines in here. Now, every line has 2 values in it that matter. One is what's inside of this value attribute, and one is then what's inside of here, which you'll notice turns white the same way the text inside of a paragraph tag does. Whatever is inside of the value section here, this is what JavaScript is going to get. When it asks for the value that was for this ID, it's going to get what's in here of whatever they have selected when they hit submit. What goes inside of here, that'll be in the white text, is what your user is going to see. So in this case, I kept them very, very similar. You'll see the only difference is I didn't capitalize the ones in here. I used lowercase for all of it. That was really just a preference thing. And then over here in what I wanted people to see, I decided to capitalize them just so it looked a little nicer. I did it originally all lowercase and it just didn't look as nice in here. So that's all we have to do in this part. Great, we're done the HTML section, so that was easy. You do not have to pick these 4 options. You could pick 4 different colors. You could pick more than 4 colors. You can keep adding just one more line. In fact, once you have it working, it's great because you can just copy and go down and paste another. And then all you have to do is change the 2 important fields, change JavaScript's value and the user's value, JavaScript's value and the user's value over and over for all of the options. So you can do that for as much as you want to choose. So now let's talk about how we're actually going to use what someone picks, because that's important. So last time we talked about doing an action on a button click. Today, our fancy new skill is called conditional statements, which is just basically saying, I want different things to happen depending on what someone selects, which is already something we were doing with the background color change. It's just in this case, we know there's only going to be a couple choices they make, and we want to make sure that different things happen based on what they choose. So we're going to use the same function we already have, the welcome me function, because it's already there, it's already working, and that's great. And like we saw in here, I included this choice inside of the form where I had all the other stuff. So it only makes sense then to have this button click, still use the same function, and for the changes I'm making now to be reflected in that function. So anything that's in black already exists in our code or already existed in our code last time. Everything that's in purple is new. You will actually recognize this line in that we assign a variable called background color to the value that is selected in the background color input ID or input element with the ID, which as you can see is this one here. You actually, I wanted to call it this to clarify because over here I kept my favorite color in here for that example and I didn't want it to be confusing, and you might want to have both of them for different reasons. So I'm calling this one background color to make it clear that when they do this, they are picking a background color. Great, so we've got that. So that first line does that. The second line again should look very, very familiar because this is actually setting the background color of the whole body element, so the whole page basically, to that background color variable. So whatever they chose is what we're going to now set the background color to. Now here's the conditional logic part, conditional statement part. I chose four specific colors here because two of them are very light, yellow and white, and two of them are very dark, navy and black. So you saw in that example that if I entered black, this is very unreadable. It would be much more readable if I entered white. Okay, so that's good. So instead, I decided that I wanted to be able to change the color of this text based on what background color someone chose. So if they chose a light color, like white or yellow, I wanted to make this text dark so it would stand out and you could read it. And then if they chose a darker color, like navy or black, I wanted to make it white so that it would stand out and they could read it. And so the way that looks is for each choice in that select. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 choices. So I have 4 lines that look like this, 3, 4. For each one, I have to say, and you walk down these in order. When I say you, I mean the computer walks down these in order and does sort of a check. It's like if you're looking for something to snack on after school, you're checking for each of the things in the order that you would like to find them. And if you can't find the first one, you move on and you move on and you move on until you find the right one. So if the background color, and again, this is one of the areas where using these nice variables is very helpful because see how many times I have it included. Wouldn't it be annoying if I had to type all of this out each time? The answer is yes, it would. So we have if our background color variable equals yellow, then you see these curly braces, then if that's true, we move inside of what is inside those curly braces, and we would do that. So let's say in this case, it's not true, okay? So this is a no. Then we're gonna move past it and we move to the next line and we check that. So we say else if, which is basically our way of saying if it's this, okay, it's not. Well, otherwise, if it's this. Our next check is background color, again, the variable stored in here. If it equals navy, does it? Let's say no. So we move on and we check that. We check the next one, else if it's white, let's say no. And let's go to the last one. Lastly, else if it's set to black. Well, that's the one I tested in here originally. So let's say that I do choose that. We go inside of here because we finally gotten a true condition that says, yeah, come on in. We actually found this snack in the fridge. Check it out. You want to have some? And what it is telling us to do is almost exactly the thing we were doing with setting the font size based on the lucky number someone chose and all the things we had last time. We're going and we're looking for the element by ID with the ID welcome, which is this right here, ID equals welcome. And we're saying that we want to set the color of the text in it to white. So right now, again, remember, it's navy here. But I'm going to set it to white because with a background color black, I know that that's going to stand out better. So now, we'll ignore that part. Again, this is only for information's sake that I kept these two in here. At this point, actually, I can just go ahead and get rid of them. So now we are upgrading our background color selection process. I'm going to keep this in here because it's in the HTML, but I'm going to remove what would happen to it in JavaScript. So now it's not being, I can enter blah, blah in here, and it would not matter at all because it's not being referred to down here in any way. So let's say we enter that, we enter a name, we enter an animal, we enter a vacation spot, and we select black as the background color. So now it changed the background color to black, just like I selected, but it changed this to be white text. So now I don't have to highlight it at all. In fact, it's harder to read if I highlight it. It looks much better. It is much easier to see, and we can actually see the answers to our questions. So that right there gets us to the point that, and here I'll do actually another example with saying yellow. So now the background went to yellow and the text went to black, because if the text had stayed white, again, you wouldn't be able to see this very well. So we have sort of these pairs that we create that say, if we want to do this, then this should be black. If we pick navy, it should be white. If we pick white, it should be black. And if we pick black, it should be white. The last two are really hard to read. So that is, in a nutshell, exactly what a select element does. And it's how we're going to use it in here as sort of a good starting point. We even had a discussion in one of the virtual sessions last month about doing the background color change and it being hard to read the text that was still there. So I think this is a really good way to sort of see that you can control a lot more and not leave it up to people who wouldn't understand your intention. Because certainly if you had a site you worked really, really hard on and you put all these different colors of all this different text and everything, and then you gave someone the option to enter whatever background color they wanted, and they picked maybe even the same color as your text. But if you had purple text everywhere and they picked a purple background, and all of a sudden all of your text was totally unreadable because it blended in with the color that they picked. You have no control over that, which doesn't sound very fun for how hard you worked on it. So a select element is going to give you a lot more power to always control, still give people a choice, but control a lot more about it and be able to act accordingly. So just a little bit of a teaser on the extra challenges in case you want to come in for those. There'll be another video that I will link separately, so we don't have all of them and you have a super lengthy video to get through. The challenge is now for this month going to be creating new JavaScript functions that are going to change text in a new div. And in my case, my example is Harry Potter characters and using quotes from them from the movies, and then quotes from them from, the books and subsequently the movies. And then changing an image based on which character you pick as well. Those are images from the movies because, yeah. A quick general cursor on that. So in the final challenge, if you did both the quote and the picture, you'd be in a position where you would have, this is my starting picture, this is my starting phrase. If I pick Dumbledore and say this, then it both changes my quote and it changes my photo. So if you get through everything in the color changing and this makes a lot of sense and you want to dive into the challenges, that's what you can expect. So hopefully I'll see you there, and I will see you in a few weeks for our virtual sessions for this month. Hope you all had a wonderful Christmas and a wonderful New Year, and I'll